Hey, welcome into Strictly Speaking. And if you are in any way invested in the ongoing abortion debate in the United States, on either side of it, then you almost certainly know the name of today's guest. Abby Johnson is a former Planned Parenthood director turned leading pro life advocate. She has written multiple best selling books on the subject, including Unplanned, The Walls Are Talking, Fierce Mercy, and her first children's book, What's in Mommy's Tummy. Her first book, Unplanned, was later turned into a major motion picture of the same name. And again, if you're invested in the abortion argument, you have seen that, no question. Abby now runs two nonprofit organizations, and then there were none, helps abortion clinic workers leave the abortion industry and find life affirming work. This organization has currently helped over 700 men and women leave these places of death and find new life in Jesus Christ. Pro Love Ministries runs several different projects and helps fill service gaps in the pro life movement. Abby's project Loveline has helped thousands of women choose life for their unborn children, and Abby has her own podcast called Politely Rude with Abby Johnson. Her most fulfilling role is her vocation as a wife and a mom. She lives in Texas with her husband and her 8 children. And today, she's going to share an amazing story with us right here on Strictly Speaking. Abby Johnson, so honored to have you here with us today. Thank you for making the time. How are you?
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here and I'm doing great.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. I know you're a very, very, very busy person now, and I can't wait to talk about something. I just introduced all of your works. You've got one coming up this fall that we're going to talk about in a little while that I'm very, very excited to tell people about. But let's start with the obvious. It's been going on 16 years, right? This October will be 16 years since your moment of clarity, your moment of transition from being a Planned Parenthood director into a pro-life advocate. Almost everybody knows, but let's do a brief version of the journey. Tell us, how did you, coming out of college, or while you were in college, how did you come to work for an organization like Planned Parenthood? What was that about?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't know anything about Planned Parenthood. I grew up in a conservative home, but, pretty well sheltered, I guess, from the outside world. Christian home, Christian parents. I'm an only child, so I didn't get the older brother, older sister, talking to or, trying to embarrass me or anything like that. I didn't get that. So um I just was very innocent and very innocently walked into this, the idea of Planned Parenthood and abortion and um feminism and it was just kind of this idea that you wanted to help women. We want to help women. We want to reduce the number of abortions. And it all sounded like this very good plan, this good idea. I mean, even the name Planned Parenthood, it sounds positive. It sounds good. Yes, you want to help women plan their parenthood. Why not? Right. And so I was just very naive going into it and really did have good intentions. I would say by and large, most people who go into this industry, they don't go in saying, yeah, I want to murder babies. I want to, that's not what it is. They go in wanting to help with that heart to help. Um, I would say I walked into the industry really believing in choice, really believing that women who came into the clinic, I would say probably when I first started, I probably did believe that most women should really consider an option other than abortion. When I left, though, I'd been there for 8 years. When I left, I would say I was a very pro abortion person. So I would say I really believed that pretty much every woman who walked in, if the thought of an abortion even came across her mind, then I would have told her, then you don't need to parent this child. You should have an abortion. And that's really what the enemy does, right? I mean, it
Those were your orders, right? I mean,
Yeah,
because I've heard you speak on this. Every person that came through the door, your job and everybody else's job was to close them, close the sale, right?
yeah, and I was very good at it. I became so good at it that I got an award for it. I mean, that's why I got Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year award. It wasn't because I was the best at remembering, people's birthdays or anything like that. I made the best cookies or anything like that. I mean, I got that award strictly because I was the best at closing an abortion deal. So, I mean, if a woman came in and she was unsure about having an abortion, I mean, once she talked to me, she was going to have that abortion. And you sell it, you become a salesperson, you sell it, and you better, because if you're the director and you don't meet your quotas, you don't meet that bottom line number, then your job's on the line. And the jobs of your employees are on the line. And the enemy says abortion is fine. And Satan tells you that abortion is no big deal and that this really is helping women achieve their educational goals and their career goals. And so, what's the big deal? It's not really a baby anyway.
Was that kind of the prevailing message of, look, you have so many other things you can do with your life besides being strapped to a child all the time, being tethered to a crib and to all of this stuff. Don't you want to go to school? Was that and was it that you really believed that, Abby, or was it simply, closing the sale in a dollars and cents way? This is how we make money. We sell abortions. Was profit the motive, or did you really think you were helping these women?
I really did think I was helping them. I think in the beginning. Um, Honestly, though, I think Bob, I think I had had two abortions by that time, um, and I think I used my own life experience to justify selling abortion to these women. So I think I thought of myself and I thought, man, what if I had not had those abortions? Where would my life be now? And I thought, I'm better off because I had those abortions. So how can I not allow other women to make that same choice? I felt like a hypocrite if I didn't help these women make that decision. And so I think there was some of that. Um, Too, I think my own shame and um, and I went to church. So and they wanted me to use the fact that I called myself a Christian. They wanted me to use that in the counseling rooms. They wanted me to tell women, "Oh, but it's fine. Most women that come in to have an abortion, they are Christians." So they wanted me to say to these women, you know, God is fine. He's fine with you having an abortion. He understands that you're in a really difficult position right now. You're in a really difficult place. And God is a God of mercy and he's a God of forgiveness. So don't you think he understands that you're in a really tough place and you're just trying to do what's best for you and your family and your future family? Don't you believe God's a God of mercy? And when you say that to a woman who's in a place where she's confused and she's in a place of distress, the woman goes, "Well, yeah, I do believe God is a God of mercy." And that in itself is a sin, right? The idea of like presumptive forgiveness, that itself is a sin. But you have to really believe what you're saying, right? You have to really believe what you're saying, or
Did you?
else if I think I did. Yeah, I mean, I think I did
Good young
because
Christian girl like you convinced yourself that God is cool with it.
yeah,
Wow.
I think I
And
did.
I mean, who put that in? You're putting it in their heads when they come in. Somebody had to put it in yours when you took this job. You're there to help women. You're maybe not thinking about the baby's life at that particular point, but still they had to convince you that as a Christian woman or a Christian young woman, grew up a Christian girl, they want to hear from you that God says it's okay. Somebody had to convince you of that and really alter your own thinking. Who did that?
I think it was primarily my boss. So, my parents were not, it's a really good question. My parents were not, uh, they were not supportive of what I was doing. They were, strong Christians. They did not support what I was doing. So I think my boss, who, if you've seen the film Unplanned, people are like, "Oh my gosh, was your boss really that terrible?" No, she wasn't that terrible. She was actually worse. She was whatever you saw in the film. She was 100 times worse than that. She was so calloused. She had worked in the industry for over 30 years. She was a fallen away Catholic, very angry at the church, very angry at God, very angry at Christianity. Um, and so I think what she did, and I think how she saw herself, was really filling this mother position in my life because I couldn't talk to my mom about what I was doing. There was kind of that strain in my relationship with my parents. Not that my parents and I didn't talk, we did, but we didn't talk about what I did, because my parents didn't want to hear about it, of course. Um, my husband, he was pro-life too. My boss, certainly before I got married, kept trying to talk me out of marrying my husband. Um, when I got pregnant with Grace, my daughter, my oldest child, tried her hardest to get me to have an abortion with my daughter, um, every day until I was 24 weeks pregnant. She stopped at 24 weeks because that was the legal limit in the state of Texas. But every day until I was 24 weeks, kept trying to convince me to abort my daughter. Um, Even though that was a very wanted pregnancy. So, you know, I think she tried to fit in that motherhood role for me, and I allowed her to do it. And that's the crazy thing for me, Bob, is that I am generally my personality is not one that um allows myself to be manipulated in that way. I have a very strong personality. Um Pretty stubborn. I always have been. My mom says the first parenting book she ever bought was How to Raise a Strong-Willed Child by James Dobson. Um, I've always been that way, but looking back, I allowed her to manipulate me and um, to talk down to me and to mold me into who she wanted me to be over those years. And, if she told me that something was right or something was wrong, I convinced myself that whatever she said, that had to be true. Um, because I allowed her to take that place in my life.
Did you have any before you went to work for Planned Parenthood? Did you have any kind of an estranged relationship with your mom?
No.
Because oftentimes you'll hear somebody like kind of adopt a surrogate father if there's no dad in their life, and if that surrogate father is steering them in bad directions, there's a reason for that because they're replacing something you didn't have. But you had a good relationship with your mom, so I'm kind of curious. Again, I know you said they don't want to talk about what you did, but I would imagine at the beginning your mom was probably telling you, Abby, no, what they're telling you isn't true. Was she well versed in that, or was that not something that you guys could do?
So it's interesting because when I first started to work for Planned Parenthood, my mom and my dad they're still married. They've been married almost 50 years. Amazing parents. Um, I did not tell them for a year and a half that I was working at Planned Parenthood. So I worked there for a year and a half. And that I can tell you, that's how I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like looking back,
Hmm.
I know in my heart that I knew it was wrong because I didn't rush home and tell my parents, like, guess what job I got, right? Because I shared everything with my parents. Um, but not the wrong things I was doing, right? Like I didn't go home and tell my parents, like, oh my God, I went to a bar and got so drunk last night, right? I didn't tell them the sinful things I was doing. Um, and I did not tell them that I got a job at Planned Parenthood. And so I think I was hoping that I was going to get like enough really great, stories about the work I was doing. And then when I dropped it on them, I was going to be like, but don't worry. Look at all the amazing things we're doing. And I tried to do that, but they weren't buying it. They were like,
Mhm.
no. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many, well woman exams or STD testings, your center has done. Like at the end of the day, you're still killing babies. And that's not okay. And so yeah, for a year and a half, I hid that from them. I kept that from them. And that was really hard for me to do. Because I've never really been that kind of person, but I did. And my boss told me that I should, that I shouldn't tell my parents. If they weren't going to be supportive, then I shouldn't even tell them, because they just, they weren't going to understand. Um, and so, yeah, when I did tell my parents, my mom and dad were just kind of like, well, you know how we feel about this. We don't support it. This is not how we've raised you. Um, but they never wanted to make it so awkward or so strained that I just stopped talking to them altogether. So they did a really good job. I feel like they were very prayerful through those years, and I feel like they did a really good job of keeping that balance, of keeping the relationship open, but when they had the opportunity, when God did open a door for them to speak truth, they took the opportunity. But they didn't nag me about it. We didn't fight about it or anything like that. There were some tense conversations, but nothing where I stormed off and said, we're never talking again, or anything like that.
Yeah, you're very fortunate that you had some very, loving parents who were respectful, even though they disagreed with you. They were respectful of you, and it didn't end your relationship. What's funny is, and not funny, in that kind of way, but it sounds like what your boss did to you is what you would do to a young 18-year-old client who came through your doors. Don't
100.
tell the people who aren't going to support you in this. Don't even tell them. Let's just get this done. This is your decision. We'll help you. But it sounds like that's what they did to you to come to work for them. Don't tell the people in your life that care about you. They don't need to know.
Yeah, it's kind of grooming. It's kind of like
Yeah,
grooming
yeah,
behavior, right? Um, hide what you don't want other people to know. Hide things from the people that can actually support you. Um, and it's encouraging kind of uh, this secretive behavior,
yeah.
and if you're, I talk to young people all the time. I tell young people this, if you have grown up in a Christian family with good Christian parents, don't ever trust a decision that you would not tell them about, because it's probably something that you shouldn't be doing.
That's good
And
advice.
I think that's pretty solid advice. I should have followed, that in my own life. Um, because time and time again, I have found myself looking back at decisions that I made thinking, that was something I kept from my parents. And if I would have just been honest, I wouldn't have made that decision. So I think that's a good word of advice to young people.
It's great advice.
If you won't tell your parents, then don't do it.
Is that why you do what you do? Because you felt like you didn't take your own advice, that you know now. It's kind of like that if I knew then what I know now. So you want to help others. There's a cliched saying something to the effect of a smart person learns from their mistakes, a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. You want to bestow wisdom on people, let them learn from the mistakes you made and follow the advice you wish you had had at that time. And that maybe is that why you do what you do?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. You know, I I think that helping to spare people from, the life decisions, the destructive life decisions that I have made certainly is motivation for me to continue to go out there and share my story. I tell young people all the time, I think sometimes young people look at me and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, so cool, she, you know, has done stuff with Trump, or she spoke at the Republican National Convention, or she knows all these conservative famous people, or she pals around with so and so and so and so." And they look at my life and they think it's glamorous. Like they think, she knows famous people. It's just cool things. but there was a price to do what I do. And that price was murdering 2 of my own children. And that price was helping other women murder about 22,000 babies. And that this, what I do, the life that I live, is not the life that anybody should want. I would give it all back. I would, every opportunity I've had, every speaking event, every meetup that I've had, and anything that I've done, I would give it all back if I could have my 2 children back today. I would give it all back, if I could have those 22,000 lives back. It's not, standing up in front of people and telling people your greatest sin is it's awful. It's not something that, um, it's not pretty, it's not glamorous, it's a terrible thing to feel called to do, but it is a calling, and it's something that, God is, he's compelled me to do it, no matter how hard it is. And when I hear from young people, like your story has inspired me to change this behavior of mine, or then, that is worth what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going to go with it. Not that there's a scoreboard there where you want to measure the number of lives that were lost when you were a director versus what you're doing now, but you have to probably realize that in almost 16 years now that you have been sharing this message, and not only that, but with the work that you're doing and trying to pull other people in that, death industry or whatever we're calling it, out of it. I would imagine you are saving countless numbers of lives by counseling people, giving people advice, pulling those people out of those, that life for themselves. So again, not that there's a scoreboard, but you are balancing the scales to an extent that, the price that you paid and the price that your 2 children that you aborted paid. There are a whole lot of other lives that are being saved because you went through that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the prayer, right? That's the hope. I saw a painting, an image one time, and it was an image, um, that someone had imagined of Saint Paul entering the gates of heaven, and he was entering the gates of heaven, and there was just this, kind of this road on both sides, uh, filled with the people that he had martyred. And I just thought, I I hope that I'm that fortunate, you know? I hope that when I get to heaven, I hope that God allows those children to be there to welcome me into the kingdom of heaven, you know? I hope that I'm that fortunate. But for other people that haven't lived my life, um, I hope that the only people that are at the gates of heaven to meet them are the people that they have loved and the people that have loved them well. I hope that the streets aren't lined with mistakes and regrets that they have made. Because it's just, you've got one chance in this life to make the right decisions. And I hope that people learn from my story. I hope that they learn there's a better way, and I hope that when they hear what's actually happening um, to these children in the womb, with, I hope that they make a better choice. I hope that they make a choice for life, because it's not just on this earth that these decisions follow you. There are eternal consequences for the decisions that we make here on earth.
No question. No question. So I want to get eventually here too, and then there were none, and the work that you're doing now. But I also want people to understand a little bit more about what it is you walked away from and when you did. Um, in part because it's in the news. The president has issued an executive order, essentially defunding, taking away all federal funds from not just Planned Parenthood, but any, abortion clinics that do thrive on taxpayer dollars. And this is, of course, a big debate. Um, so I want people to know exactly what their tax dollars are funding. And I want to draw on your experiences when you were directing that clinic. And you don't have to tell all the stories because, I listened to you for an hour and a half at a speech. But in a few minutes, you can tell maybe a couple of the stories, including the one that really sat me bolt upright in my chair when I heard you say it. I was just so shocked to hear you say it. What they called the storage facility that you had in the back room of the clinic while you waited for those remains to be picked up and discarded. Tell that particular part of the story because I want people to hear what callousness toward life actually looks and sounds like in those clinics.
Mhm. So, in abortion facilities, there is a place, there's a room called the POC room, POC lab. POC stands for products of conception. Of course, the product of conception is the baby, but you don't say baby inside of an abortion clinic. So, and in that room, in that POC lab, there's a lot of counter space. That's where you reassemble the parts of the baby to make sure that everything has been removed from the woman's uterus because you've got to make sure that the legs, the head, the arm, the spine, everything's removed because if you leave part of that in the woman's uterus, she can become very sick, she can become septic, and it can be fatal to her. So, I was taking a tour around the clinic. I had just gotten started there, and one of the guys was showing me around. And I noticed as we were in that room, there was a white freezer in that room. And so I asked, what's the freezer about? What's in the freezer? And the guy that was showing me around, he explained to me that after abortion days, they would take all of the remains of the POC, all of the baby parts, and they would dump them into a red biohazard bag, like a big Ziploc bag. And they would then put all the body parts that they would put that bag into this freezer. And then once a week, a biohazard medical waste company, ours was Stericycle, would come into the facility. They would pick up the bags and they would take them to their facility where they incinerate them, where they burn them. And he told me at that time that they jokingly called that freezer the nursery because that's where all the babies were kept. And I remember him just like throwing his head back and like laughing, just this big, demonstrative laugh. And I just was thinking, that's not funny. Like that, because it had just been days before when I had been, recruited to work for this organization. And at that time, one of the ways I had been recruited was because this woman from Planned Parenthood had been telling me that, abortion, oh, it's, such a devastating decision. This is such a tragedy. Abortion, such a tragedy, and it's such a difficult day for women. It's the most difficult decision a woman's ever going to make. And so I went into this thinking, all right, like we're here to walk with women during this devastating time in their life. And so I couldn't figure out, like, I couldn't square up what was going on here because it seemed like, even though I'd been told it was this difficult, terrible thing, that the clinic seemed to think it was a joke. And that sort of gallows humor, that sort of macabre atmosphere, that was what I lived in for 8 years. I mean, making jokes about the babies. Um, you know, the staff would, instead of saying, POC, they would say that it stood for pieces of children. Um, just all different types of jokes and uh, just thinking it was hilarious. What we were doing was so hilarious. And that is kind of like a behind the scenes look of what is actually happening in these abortion facilities because even you look at even today, like currently in today's times, you look at someone like Bobby Kennedy, who is a pro-choice person, but during his hearing they ask about abortion. He says, I think every abortion is a tragedy. But I'm telling you, if you walk into a Planned Parenthood clinic, the Planned Parenthood employees, abortion clinic employees, are joking about abortion. They are cracking jokes at the expense of the women lying there on these abortion clinic tables. They're joking about the way their bodies look. They're making fun of them behind their backs. They're laughing about how many times they've had abortions. They're calling them names under their breath and when they're sedated, and the women won't remember what they said. It's not a serious place. It's not a serious healthcare provider. And they don't respect the women who are walking in. And they don't believe it's a tragedy. They believe it's a joke. And human life and the death of a human child, the death of a human being, should never and is never a joke.
Yeah. The acknowledgement that those were pieces of children, that those were body parts. They knew these weren't what, they try to convince people it's a blob of cells or a blob of protoplasm. It's not really life. They know they had to, as you say, reconstruct the baby to make sure nothing was left inside. So they know it's a baby. And for them to act that way and then to talk about the women that way, as you described. So I have to ask this, and I say this without any judgment whatsoever. You've already judged yourself, which is why you do what you do. But try to explain this to me and anybody watching. You went 9 years through this. That first POC thing and the whole nursery line came in your early training, and
Oh,
you
like
lasted
the
nine
first
years.
few days.
First few days, okay. Um, how did you not run screaming from that place early, or at some point in year one or in year two? How do you make it 9 years listening to the jokes being cracked about the death of babies, and the moms that you thought you were being merciful toward were being mocked by the people that worked for you and with you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I just think I didn't have the courage to walk away. I think I was at such a um it was really just a sinful time in my life. It was just a real dark time in my life, you know? I was not living inside the will of God. I was in, sinful relationships. I was participating in sinful things, and I think there was just a hardness in my heart. And so even though I knew what I was hearing was wrong, even though I knew instinctively in my heart, like, this is disgusting, like, what I'm hearing is wrong, um, I just think I didn't have the courage to take a stand, to say, "This is gross. Like, what you guys are saying is wrong. The jokes you're making, they're terrible, and they're not funny." I didn't feel like I don't think I felt like I was in any position because of the things I was doing. I don't think I felt like I was in any position to have some sort of moral high ground. Um, because yeah, they were making jokes, and yeah, they were saying weird things, and yeah, they were, performing abortions, but I mean, I was also doing bad things, you know? And so I think I just thought, well, we're kind of all on this sin boat together, And I think that's what happens. I think when your heart is hardened, I think when you're actively participating in sinful behaviors, no matter what they are, whether it's, you know, sexual sin, whether it's, and that was really my sin, was sexual sin, and drunkenness and, um, being exploited and exploiting others. And I think your heart just grows dark, and your mind, uh, it turns from the Lord, it turns to other things. And so I think it was just very easy for me to make excuses for sinful behavior. And that's really the only, it's not an excuse, but I think it's just, that's the only thing that makes sense in my mind now, looking back.
So when you finally made the move, and you experienced what you experienced, in that very well told story now, and you can tell it again as much as you think people need to hear. Was that you finding the moral high ground? Was it morality that sent you out of that procedure that you watched via ultrasound, now that you realized what it was? Or was it not morality? Was it horror? Was it just, oh my gosh, I've seen the body parts in the bag in the quote unquote nursery, but now I'm seeing how they come apart and what is done. What triggered you at that point in time? Was it a sense of morality and just being aghast at this, or were you just like just so terrified by it you couldn't anymore?
I think I was in shock in the beginning. The film Unplanned shows me like going into the bathroom and like crying and, having kind of this come apart. And that's actually not what happened. Um, but the writers, the directors of the film, they were like, we need to kind of show what a normal person, like how a normal person would react in this scenario.
I get
Um,
that.
yeah. But that was actually not what happened at all. I actually just I remember dropping the ultrasound probe, like, just in shock after I saw the ultrasound guided abortion. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. I felt really stupid. I felt like, "Oh my gosh, like, I have just believed this lie for all these years. What have I been doing? I have been speaking this lie. I've been, like, a cheerleader for a lie. Like, I'm such an idiot." Um, and I just felt shock. I did feel horror. Um, and I just felt like a liar, and I hate liars. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I am the biggest liar I know." And initially, when I left that day, I finished out the day. I finished out the workday. And I sat in my office. I was like, I'm not gonna participate in any more abortions. I'm not gonna do anything else today. So I just sat in my office and just like pretended I was working on paperwork. Um, and then I went home and I told my husband what I had seen. And he was kind of like, well, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do now? You've seen the truth. I've been telling you this, right? For all these years. Like, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I don't know. And I called one of my good friends who had at one time worked at Planned Parenthood but had been fired. And I told her what I saw. And she was pretty shocked too. And she asked the same question. Well, what do you
Abby, if I may, tell us what you saw in your words. And people who saw the movie can see that depiction of it, but describe what it is that you saw that made you drop that probe and rethink everything.
Yeah, so, it was 13-week abortion, live on an ultrasound, and I saw this 13-week-old baby try to move away, try to he was fighting for his life. He was trying to get away from the suction instruments, from the suction tube that was trying to take his life. And, people would like to say it was just like a reflex, just it was just reflexive, like he didn't know what he was doing. But I'm telling you what I saw on that screen, it was not reflexive. That baby looked like he was panicked. Just like any of us would look if, something was coming at us and trying to take our life. We would be trying to save ourselves, trying to protect our body. And that's what it looked like. this child was doing. And I'd never seen anything like that before. I had believed, for all these years that whatever was going on in the womb was not, really life. It wasn't really important. Um, it was just, unwanted tissue, just kind of waste. And so to see this on this very clear ultrasound was very shocking to me. And I called one of my good friends, told her. She was like, still very pro-abortion. But she was like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't believe you saw that. What are you gonna do?" I was like, "I don't know." Sunday, I went to church. The I went to a very pro-choice church. Um, and the gospel was from the Gospel of Matthew, where the scripture says, if your hand causes you to sin, better to cut it off. Um, if your eye causes you to sin, better to pluck it out, whatever. And my hand had been, holding this ultrasound probe. And I just kept thinking about that. I kept thinking, like, oh my gosh. Um, I felt like that scripture was just speaking directly to me. And I thought, okay, okay, God, like I hear what you're saying, but I was still really scared to leave because I made a ton of money and my husband was a teacher, which he makes no money. So I was like, what are we going to do? I had a little child, so I was very scared. And plus my identity was wrapped up in my work. I was like, I don't know who I'm going to be if I'm not this, if I'm not this feminist, ultra feminist Planned Parenthood director, I don't know who I am outside of that. So I was very nervous to leave. I knew that if I left, I was going to be leaving all my friends. I knew I was going to have to leave my church. I was really leaving this identity that I had made, and so um, I was nervous. I went back that Monday thinking that I was going to change Planned Parenthood, that I was going to change protocols, and that I was going to, uh, suddenly change the corporate culture of Planned Parenthood and, make us, I don't know, less pro abortion or something. I don't know what I was thinking. And I worked that entire week. I was physically sick. I was like throwing up every day when I was going to work. I just was physically ill every time I was going to work. I hated it. Um, I was taking these really long lunches. I was trying to find another job. I didn't feel like I could leave until I had another job lined up. And then at the end of the week, I was sitting in my office. In my office, I had a view of the parking lot from where I was. And I was looking outside and I saw this woman going out to her car. And she was holding a bag, a brown paper bag. And I knew inside of that bag there were medication abortion pills. The abortion pill was in there. And I just thought, I'm still doing it. I mean, even if I'm not in the room, even if I'm not counseling these people on abortions, I'm still doing it. I'm still part of this wheel, right? Of abortion at Planned Parenthood. Everything we do is about abortion. And I just thought I can't do it anymore. And so that was when I knew I was going to have to leave, whether I had a job or not, whether we were going to be broke or not. I just knew I had to leave. And so that's when I put in my resignation and left. And that was when all hell broke loose. Um, because I went to the Coalition for Life. I went to the pro-life group next door. I knew I was going to be help. I knew I was going to need help finding another job. Everybody knew in town that I was the Planned Parenthood director. I lived in a very conservative town. Everybody knew me. I was kind of known as like the most hated local celebrity in town. And I thought I'm going to need their help. And so I went to them. And when Planned Parenthood found out that I had gone to the Coalition for Life for help, they sued me. And they sued me. They sent out a press release to the Associated Press telling them that they were suing me. The Associated Press was like, "Why are you suing her? Why do you want to gag her? What does she know that you don't want us to know?" And then I suddenly found myself on just about every national news station in the country, very unexpectedly. I never intended to tell my story publicly. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I never wanted anybody to know what I had done. But
Um,
God could have rolled out the red carpet, and I felt like He was compelling me to share. And so that's what I do.
so two quick follow-ups to that. Obviously, you won the lawsuit or they dropped it,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because you've been
Yeah,
telling
we
the
won
story
the
for 16
lawsuit.
years. So that's good. You were able to tell that story. What did the Coalition for Life think when you showed up at their door? Did they think you were there to troll them? Or I mean, because they had to have been like, "Oh my gosh, this is Abby Johnson, the most hated celebrity, as you say, in the town." And then you show up at their door and you say what to them, and they say what to you?
Yeah, I should have. Well, I called them first, actually, because I didn't just want to show up. I thought I might scare them.
Yeah.
Uh, so I called first, and a woman named Heather answered the phone. And I said, "Hey, this is Abby Johnson from the clinic." I'm sure she thought I was calling to complain about something, but um, I said, "I would like to come into your office and talk to you." I said, "I've experienced something and I need to talk to somebody about it. And I would like to come in and talk to you guys." And she said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm sitting outside your building in the parking lot." And they were like next door to us. And she said, "Can you hold on, please?" And so she put me on hold. And then she came back on and she said, "Okay, come to the back door. We'll meet you there." So I went to the back door. They opened the back door so slowly. It was like they thought I had like a bomb strapped to me or something. They opened it so slowly, so carefully. And they all were just kind of standing there. I was bawling my face off. And I finally was like, "Can I come in?" Because they were all just staring at me. So I went in. I think they were skeptical. I think some of them were skeptical, like, "Is this real?" Is she really serious, you know? Um, I think some of them felt that way, but some of them, they had known me for so long, on the other side of this issue. I mean, Sean Carney was the director of the Coalition for Life at that point. Um, and he had known me the entire time. I'd worked at Planned Parenthood. So I think he knew, if she's coming here, then this is real. This is really happening. Um, and so he just, I just kind of shared everything. I just kind of had this like this like verbal dump of all this stuff I needed to say. And I think I was there for like an hour and a half. And Sean just said, "You need to be careful about who you're saying this to right now." He said, "Because if they find out you're talking about this, they're going to come after you." And 3 weeks later was when we got served with paperwork to go to court. And yeah, it's just been a journey since then. And the woman that answered the phone, she was probably the most skeptical, actually, Heather. But she's now godmother to two of my children. So,
Gosh.
everything worked out. So,
That's wonderful. I could sit here and listen to more of that story, but we don't have a ton of time left. And I would like to know actually about your relationships with people like your former boss, who was 100 times worse than what was depicted in the show in the movie. But I want to talk about, and then there were none. The last count I saw said over 700 people had left clinics like the one you ran and will not participate in this anymore. Tell us a little bit more about that.
yeah, so we started, and then there were none in 2012, not really knowing if this would be successful or not. Just kind of, I felt a calling from the Lord to do it. And so We got it started. There'd never been a national ministry reaching out to abortion clinic workers before. So I thought, well, I think this is what God's telling me to do. So we're going to do it. And that first year, we helped over 50 workers leave that first year. And we thought maybe it was just a fluke because it was new and we were reaching out. And now we're almost up to 750 workers that have left the industry. And success for us is not just getting them out of the industry. Success for us is helping them get out and then helping them develop a relationship with Christ. And so that's what that 750 number represents.
How do you reach out to somebody like that? I mean, you're kind of scoping out the clinics and see who's walking in and walking out, and and then going up to talk to them. Are you looking online? I mean, how do you find an abortion worker to reach out to?
Yes, we do a lot of mailings. We do a lot of in reaches to the clinic through mail. We have a handwritten card ministry. We send postcards. We send all kinds of fun stuff. Like, we've sent in air fresheners with my face on it before. We send like all kinds of funny things into the clinic, bingo tickets, and like all kinds of like funny little things to catch their attention. So they know who we are. They are hearing from us about once every 4 to 5 business days. So they
Wow.
know who in the There or None is. They know who we are. They know that they can reach out to us if they have a bad day. If they decide this is not for me. Our slogan is no one grows up wanting to work in the abortion industry. And so our job is to help them understand that, help them realize that, and help them get out. Um, so we're reaching in. We're also working with groups that are on the sidewalks. So we train sidewalk advocates that are out there in front of the abortion clinics. We help them so that they can most effectively reach out to the people that are walking in and out of the clinics that are workers. We also do, geo tracking, geofencing. We Google's crazy. It's like you can basically stalk people through Google. So, through Google ads. So, if we can tell, Google can tell if the same person is at a specific location 3 to 4 times a week. And so, if that's the case, then our ads will pop up on their phone for them. So all different ways we're reaching out to them. We work with pro-life physicians in the area. So if a pro-life physician has a job opening, they'll contact us and say, "Hey, I'm willing to hire somebody from our local abortion clinic. Can you let them know?" We'll make phone calls, talk to people who answer the phone, say, "Hey, we got a great job opening. If you know anybody who's interested in looking for another job." We fill jobs in that way sometimes, get people out. So many different ways. We help pregnancy centers sometimes establish relationships with abortion clinics in their local town. Um, Many different ways. We're just trying to reach in any different way that we can.
I love it. Creative and outside the box thinking to just reach out and let them know there is an alternative to this for you. And I think it's fantastic. The last thing I have for you, Abby, is one I'm really excited about. I kind of can't wait till fall now. Um, I thought that the unthinkable name for the upcoming movie would be what you think. Let's make abortion unthinkable. But you explained that in the speech that I saw you give a little bit differently. Tell us what unthinkable is.
Yeah, so Unthinkable is a documentary where we are sharing the most unthinkable stories you have ever heard in your life. These are stories directly from women who have worked in the abortion industry, doctors, nurses, physician assistants, medical assistants. These are stories that are unimaginable, things that humans should never participate in, things that we should never have to think about. They're so grisly, they're so gruesome, but they are happening on a daily basis inside of our country's abortion industry. And we cannot, simply sit around and say, "Oh my gosh, that's so hard to hear," like la, 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 la. We are the only voice for these unborn children. And we have to be equipped to be their very best advocates. And sometimes the only way to be the best advocate is to hear the stories, so that we can then share with women who are on the fence about having abortion, who are determined to have an abortion, to be able to say, let me tell you what exactly going to happen to your child if you walk into an abortion clinic. Let me tell you what's going to happen to you if you walk into an abortion clinic. And, movies like Unplanned, uh, documentaries like Unthinkable, these we're creating them not just for entertainment. We're not creating them so that you'll be entertained. We're creating them so that you will be equipped. We're creating them so that they will be a tool for you, so that you can be the very best advocate, so that you will be the very, very best lifesaver that you can be. And it's going to come out in the fall. There are stories in there that will completely shake you to your core. And I'm excited. I'm excited for it to come out. I'm excited for just even for these babies' stories to be heard, for people to understand that these children are the victim. They are the victim of abortion. They are those that we need to be fighting for justice for. And these women are bravely and courageously coming out and saying, this is what I did. And I'm willing to put my name out there. I'm willing to put my face out there. There's no anonymity in this documentary. Nobody's behind a black screen. Nobody's name is darkened out. Nobody's face is darkened out. These are women who have participated. Their names are out there, the clinics they worked at, their faces, and they're willing to bravely come out here and say, this is what I did. These are the sins I committed. And I'm willing to put my face out here. I'm willing to put my name out here because these children deserve justice.
And that's exactly what you've done with your entire life since that day that you walked out, and it's incredible. Well, Abby, I thank you for your courage, and I thank you for your inspiration, and I thank you for your story. Keep telling it. I know you're going to keep telling this as long as you have breath, and I cannot wait until this fall. Where is there a website set up for it yet, or do they just go to abbyj.com? Where can people keep tabs on when Unthinkable will be released?
Yeah, they can go to my website, but they can also go to unthinkabledoc.com.
Unthinkable Doc for documentary, right?
Mhm.
Unthinkabledoc.com. Got it. Okay. Because I want to make sure to share that with as many people as possible. There you go. We'll keep putting those things up on the screen throughout. Abby, thank you. God bless you. I know He already has. And thank you for the blessings you're bestowing on so many people with this story that I'm sure retelling and reliving over and over and over again is the last thing in the world that you want to do, but you feel like you have to do. And that's incredible. And we thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
All right. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Strictly Speaking. Obviously, share this everywhere that you can with anybody you think might be impacted by this. And make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you click like and subscribe to us as well. We really, really want to make sure that this reaches as many people as possible, including people who may not see things the way you see them when it comes to this obviously very contentious issue of abortion. But Abby Johnson's story is one worth sharing, so please do that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on Strictly Speaking.